We're going to start our class today by welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee-kap, welcome to Wat Sung Yu, welcome to our course. This is a 5-day course that you're welcome to participate in any part of it that you would like, where I'm going to be helping students to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. So I'd like to welcome you guys here and welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. This course is going to help you to develop a nice foundation in understanding the teachings of the Buddha and how to move the mind to the enlightened mental state. What enlightenment is where the mind's peaceful, it's calm, serene, content, with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment. All of these discontent feelings and others are eliminated from the mind. And that is acquired through training of the mind. So what the teachings of the Buddha are is to help you understand how to train your own mind and awaken to that wisdom so that now you can eliminate and purify the mind to the point where it's not experiencing these discontent feelings any longer. So the way I'm going to start our course is with practicing meditation so that you guys can get a little bit of experience practicing meditation. And then after that, I'll go ahead and start the course by sharing with you what we're going to actually be learning in the course. And then we'll actually be moving into our first talk where I'll be sharing with you the life story of the Buddha so that you understand who this individual is before you actually start learning his teachings. So if you'd like to start with meditation, I'll invite you guys to join. You can meditate in 4 different positions, and I'm going to be teaching you these 4 positions in the class, which is the seated position, seated, lying, standing, and walking. These 4 positions are utilized for different reasons at different times. Usually when students are first starting to learn, they learn in the seated position. So I see you guys are all sitting on the floor, but you can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair. If you are at home and you're sitting on a sofa or a bench or in a wheelchair or anything like this, you can really sit however you like. But let me just give you a little bit of guidance on sitting so that you can get comfortable. Usually if you're on the floor, you just lightly cross your legs. This helps the circulation to flow, whereas if your legs were real tight, it would impede the circulation. So you like your legs to just be lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. And this can be more comfortable for some people. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you would like to do this, you could, but this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. You need to find what's comfortable for you. So you might decide to put your palms on your thighs or your knees or your palms up or resting your hands comfortably in your lap. It's whatever you find comfortable. There's not just one fixed way to place your hands. So your lower body and your hands and arms should be relaxed and comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid with the upper body, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So you would like your sternum up and your shoulders back, which keeps your mind attentive and alert during the meditation. And it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, fully expanding the lungs. The way that I start with our meditation is I start with some chanting. Chanting was used during the lifetime of the Buddha as a way to commit the teachings to memory because everything that he taught was oral. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word through chanting as a way to commit them to their memory. Nowadays, we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory because we have books and audiobooks, podcasts, videos, things like this. But I still do chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. I'm going to teach you guys the chanting this afternoon after lunch. But now what I'm going to do is just kind of chant, and you guys are welcome to chant along if you like, if you know these chants. The chants are over on the table over there. There's a laminated sheet that has the chants that I'm going to be doing. And there's the English translation as well, so you can see the meaning behind the words because we're chanting in the Pali language. But just understand that these chants, they're not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, or we're not worshiping the Buddha. There's nothing mystical or magical here with the chanting, and it's not even a prayer or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, it was solely used in order to commit the teachings to memory, and nowadays we can use it to kind of ease the mind into meditation and out of meditation. So I'm going to chant on our way into meditation. Then there'll be a period of time where I'm providing guidance to help you understand how to meditate while we're actually doing the meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're meditating together. Everybody here and all of you guys at home will just all be meditating together at the same time. Then after that, we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting to ease us out. And that's where I'll start the class. Okay, so if you'd like to make yourself comfortable, and remember, you can join along in the chanting at any time that you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Namasati Satatava Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังมหาคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาคะวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสัคขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวาปานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, I'd like to welcome all of you guys that are here at the temple. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. As I mentioned, this is the Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, where I'm going to be helping you to establish a foundation in the teachings of the Buddha that lead to this enlightened mental state. This meditation was just an opportunity for you to experience a little bit of the meditation. We're going to be talking about this throughout the course, and there's plenty of times where we're going to be meditating throughout the course. But for this morning, this was just to give you a chance to kind of experience a little bit of the meditation. And then later, we're going to be diving into detail and helping you to understand it and how to practice it. So whatever you experienced today while you were meditating, whether it was a bombardment of thoughts, maybe you had lots of thoughts coming through your mind, or maybe you indulged in a thought for a period of time and you followed it. This is all completely normal, and I'll help you to understand this and why this is occurring. You're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind is untrained. So we'll talk about this in more detail as we go in the course. For those of you guys that this is your first time here, I would like you to know that there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to use that at any time, so feel free to get up and use that. I will take breaks at different times during the class, but if you would like to use it at any time, feel free to use it. There's even bathrooms outside the classroom. If you go outside the classroom, there are signs that'll take you around to the main temple bathrooms, and you can see those and use those if you'd like. And we even have water and snacks here that are provided by our students. Feel free to help yourself to that and make yourself comfortable at any time. So what I'm going to share with you guys here to get us started is just an introduction to what you're going to be learning as part of the course. So as I mentioned, this is the name of the course, and this is the time frame that we're going to be meeting. I'm going to be starting each morning at 9 a.m. and then we'll be finishing around 3 p.m. Sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. We take an hour and a half lunch break. You'll see how the class goes. It's really nice and steady and gives you plenty of time to learn, gives you plenty of time to relax, gives you time to meet each other and spend time meeting new friends and things like that. But this is kind of generally the time frame that our course is going to be happening. This is me here. And by the way, we have Siddhartha here, who he's going to be teaching tomorrow. Typically, I will be teaching the entire course, but my son is graduating from 5th grade tomorrow. So I'm going to be going to his graduation. So Siddhartha volunteered, or at least I asked him if he would be willing to teach tomorrow. So he's going to be teaching you guys tomorrow. His name's Siddhartha, and his sister's here, his mom's here. So you'll get a chance to meet them, and he'll be able to teach you tomorrow. If you need my contact information for any reason, this is my contact information. If you're not coming to class, you don't have to let me know. If you're here, I'll teach you. If you're not here, it's okay. Don't feel like you need to reach out to me and tell me that you're not coming. But if you'd like to, this is the contact information. Or the main reason why I share this contact information is you might be interested in contacting me after the course for any particular reason. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need continuous ongoing support. It's not going to be just 5 days and boom, you're going to get to enlightenment. You're going to need continuous support. So if you would like to contact me for any reason, this is my contact information. You'll find the same information on our website, which is buddhadailywisdom.com. You'll be able to see all this same information there. So that's a central hub for you to be able to access all the things that you need in order to be able to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. So in terms of the way the class is structured is today we're doing kind of welcomes, and I'm kind of introducing you to the course and so forth and so on. But each day, the way that our course is going to go is we're going to start each morning at 9 a.m. with chanting and meditation. So we have a meditation period which gives you a chance to actually practice meditation and experience it. And you can get in the flow of doing that each day. And then at 9:30, this is where I'm going to start sharing teachings. Some people refer to this as a Dhamma talk. The word Dhamma means teachings. So this is a discussion or a talk. I don't think of it as a sermon or a lecture or anything like that. It's more of a discussion. It's me sharing teachings with you, helping you to understand what the Buddha taught, and you asking questions and seeking insight. You are on your own independent journey to enlightenment. A teacher is like a tour guide. We're pointing out to you what it is that you need to learn, but it's you that's doing the work to learn. We're doing the work to share the teachings with you, but it's your journey to enlightenment, and we're here to help you to be able to see what you need to learn and guide you along the path. So that's what I'm going to be doing during that particular time frame, because you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. The Buddha meditated to get to enlightenment, but there's a whole host of other things that you would need to know and learn and develop and understand and practice in order to get to enlightenment. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. So some people put a lot of emphasis on meditation, and while meditation is important, there's other things you need to learn too. So that's why there's that period of time from 9:30 until lunch where we'll be sharing the teachings with you that it's going to help you move to enlightenment. And we take a mid-morning break in there, somewhere around 10:30 to 11. There's going to be a mid-morning break where we kind of break for 15-20 minutes or so, give you guys a chance to stretch your legs, use the restroom, get some snacks, talk to each other, and things like this. So you'll see how that goes. Then we generally take a lunch around 12 o'clock, and sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but we take a nice long lunch. We usually take about an hour and a half lunch, and then we come back at 1:30, and then in the afternoon we do meditation again, so that you're meditating in the morning and you're meditating in the afternoon as well. And then we use the afternoon to teach you, after meditation, things like chanting and meditation itself. You're going to be learning breathing mindfulness meditation in this course. You're going to be learning in the seated, lying, standing, in the walking position. So you're going to learn walking meditation as well. And you're going to learn Buddhist chanting as well. So there's various things that you're going to be learning in the afternoon where that focuses more on meditation. The morning is focused on teaching you the things you need to know in order to guide you to enlightenment through the wisdom that the Buddha shared. Then we usually generally finish around 3 o'clock each day. Again, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. But at any point that you need to leave, feel free to leave, right? So if we went to 3:10 or 3:15 in a particular day, I'd be surprised, because typically we finish up right around 3. But depending on the conversation, we might go to 3:10 or 3:05 or something like this. This isn't hard fast. But at any point, if you have some obligation. Even if you have something you need to do at 2:30 or 2 o'clock, feel free to leave. You're not being disrespectful to do that. That's just a choice that you need to make. And if you have something that you need to do, feel free to go do that. I'm here to teach those people that are here. But if you have something else you need to do, that's up to you to decide for yourself. And then on the 5th day, which is the Friday, we're going to be learning for 4 days up to Thursday. And then on Friday, I invite you to a field trip. Whereas if you'd like to go to 2 local temples, I invite you to a forest temple, which is called Wat Umong. And then we go to a temple up on the mountain called Wat Doi Sutep. And it's kind of like a classroom without walls that I walk you around the temple and I teach you about the symbolism, the architecture, the artwork. Because if you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha for 4 days, you can go into a temple environment and it's almost like the temple speaks to you. That if you understand the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism, now instead of just, oh wow, that's beautiful, let me take a picture, it's like, oh wow, I see what they were trying to communicate. Because these temples were oftentimes created 500 to 1,000 years ago, and the artists that built them, they were communicating the teachings of the Buddha in their artwork. And if you understand that symbolism in artwork, it's almost like a scavenger hunt, or like the walls of the temple are speaking to you and communicating something to you. So I'm going to walk students around. The students that are here are invited, and even if students don't actually come to the course, you'll see that other people will join us that aren't even here at the course. They might just come just for the tour by itself. So if you have friends or family, or you run into people this week that are interested in coming, anybody and everybody's welcome to come to this tour. And I'm going to give you guys more details on this probably around Thursday. I'll help you to understand how we organize it and what it's all about and all that kind of stuff. And then you can decide if you would like to come or not. But that's a really fun time after being in the classroom for 4 days to go out and spend a good time outside, walking around in nature. And we eat at a Hill Tribe restaurant and have some good food and things like this. So it's a really enjoyable day if you'd like to come. This course is based on this book called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the first book of the book series that I share. All these books are on the bookshelf over there. It's a 13-book series, and this particular course is based on the first book. We're covering just a few of the chapters in the book. There's other programs where I go through every single chapter of the book, but this particular course goes through chapter 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 19. And you might decide to acquire a version of this book. You can acquire it through downloading it from our website for free. If you'd like to read it online, you can take it and go print it yourself if you like. There's plenty of print shops here in Thailand and other parts of the world that'll produce a book for you with a file. You can get printed versions here at the temple by essentially reimbursing us for our printing cost. And then if you have access to Amazon in your country, you can even order it from your home country and get one from Amazon. So these are available for you, and it's going to help you to be able to learn and practice, because there's certain things in the classes that aren't in the book, right? And there's certain things that are in the book that aren't in the classes. So a combination between reading and coming to the classes, this will help you to be fully informed about the teachings of the Buddha. So this is the book that we're using for this particular course. The things that you're going to be learning starting off this morning here in a few moments is we're going to start with the life story of the Buddha. I'm going to provide you a summarized version of his life story so you understand who this person is and what he did during his lifetime, because you're about to embark potentially on a journey to deeply learn his teachings, and it's helpful to know a bit about this individual. So I'm going to teach you about that. Then after that, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back from our break, and I'll teach you enlightenment. What is enlightenment? Because you need to understand what the goal of these teachings are so that you'll know that you're interested in journeying to this particular mental state, and then you'll be able to more readily navigate your way to it. If you were interested in, or somebody was sharing with you that there's this city called Chiang Rai that is 3 hours north of Chiang Mai, probably the first thing you would ask is, well, what's going on in Chiang Rai? What's there? What kind of things do they have there? What's it like? Right? So I'm going to explain to you what enlightenment is and what it's like. And then you'll know where it is. You'll know what it is. You'll know how to navigate your way to it. And once you arrive, you'll know that you're there, right? So if somebody tells you about the parks and the malls and the streets and the signs at Chiang Rai, you'll be able to more readily navigate your way there. And once you're there, you'll know that you're there. And the same thing is true about enlightenment. Knowing a bit about it, you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you attain enlightenment, you'll know that you've actually attained it. Then tomorrow with Siddhartha, he's going to be teaching you the Four Noble Truths, establishing right view, and the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. In terms of the teachings of the Buddha, this is how you get started on the path to enlightenment. You would need to know these teachings. If you didn't know the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, you would have no ability to get to enlightenment whatsoever. So it's so important that you learn this, and you're probably going to need to learn it more than one time. It's very rare that you can learn something just once and then you master it right away. You're going to need to learn it more than one time. So you might start tomorrow learning it with Siddhartha, and I've taught this many times and it's been recorded, so you can also see how I teach it as well, because the way he teaches it isn't going to be exactly the same as I teach it, because we're two different people and we teach it different ways. But if you would like to learn this, there's other classes and courses and retreats where I do teach it, and it's been recorded many, many times. So as you maybe decide to learn with me in future courses or retreats, you'll be able to see how I teach it, but then also you can learn through the recordings as well. And for anybody who's joining us online, tomorrow Siddharth's not going to be live streaming, but you can actually watch the recordings of where I've actually taught these in the past. If you go to our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, or on the podcast, you'll be able to watch just like as if you were attending this live. You'll be able to pull up a video and be able to watch these. And if you need help to find those, you can just send me a message and I will send you the link so that you can watch those, since you're not going to be able to participate in the class tomorrow, since Siddhartha won't be live streaming. Then on Wednesday, I will be sharing with you Transforming the Three Poisons, Craving, Anger, and Ignorance. This is where you're going to learn about the three high-level problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and then the solutions of how to remedy them and how to eliminate them from the mind to move the mind to the enlightened mental state. This is what's motivating all the unskillful conduct that you're experiencing. So when you're bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive or irritated or annoyed with people, this is the reason why. And understanding the reason why you're experiencing this and the solutions of how to eliminate it, then you'll be able to more easily navigate to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment. Then also Wednesday morning, I'll be sharing with you the 5 precepts, a householder's guide to daily practice. If you've learned that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, this isn't what the Buddha taught. He didn't actually teach that way. That sounds like a bunch of rules and commandments. It sounds like black and white. The Buddha doesn't teach that way. So I'm going to use the original words of the Buddha, as we're going to do with these other classes too, where you can see what he actually taught. And that way you're not believing any teachings, but instead you can learn and develop and independently verify what it is that the Buddha is teaching. When you're learning the 5 precepts, he's teaching you the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, so that you can awaken to the wisdom to see certain wise decisions that you're making are leading to wholesome results, but certain unwise decisions that you're making are leading to unwholesome results. This natural law of karma, it's not anything mystical or magical or anything like that. It's literally cause and effect. It's action and result. There's no being that's overseeing this. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's about helping you to see the wisdom of certain causes are going to lead to certain effects, or certain actions are going to lead to certain results. Because if you don't understand that, you're going to keep making unwise decisions in your life, and you're going to keep experiencing unwholesome results. So when you have unwholesome things coming back to you, this isn't good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate or anything like this. It's not because of other people. It's decisions that you're making that are leading to any particular results in your life. And when you awaken to the wisdom of these natural laws, then you'll be able to see the certain causes and conditions that produce wholesome results in your life, and then you'll make more and more of those wise decisions. But as long as you lack wisdom, you're going to naturally make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So the teachings of the Buddha, like I mentioned, they're not a bunch of beliefs and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning wisdom that you can apply in your life today, and then you can move your mind and your life to this peaceful and joyful state where you can just always be experiencing wholesome results in your life because you're not making any unwise decisions. So this 5 precepts is going to help you to start to understand that, along with what we're going to be talking about on Thursday, which is the natural law of karma itself. All the teachings of the Buddha, even when you learn the Eightfold Path with Siddhartha, it's helping you to understand the natural law of karma. But on Thursday morning, I'm going to go in and talk to you about the natural law of karma itself. We're going to dissect it. We're going to demystify it, helping you to understand what this natural law actually is. Then we're going to be talking about what is merit. This is a unique type of wholesome karma that you need to understand. And then we're going to be talking about continuous support on the path to enlightenment and how to receive continued support beyond beyond this actual course. In terms of the meditation in the afternoons, I'm going to be sharing with you breathing mindfulness meditation in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you're going to learn Buddhist chanting as well. This afternoon, I'm going to be teaching you how to do that. And then towards the end of the course, I'm going to teach you how to integrate these teachings into your life, because oftentimes people come to courses like this or retreats, they have a great experience, but then they really struggle integrating what they learned into their life to actually experience the benefit. So I'm going to spend some time helping you to understand that, how you can take the lessons that you've learned here, integrate them into your life, and start really experiencing significant benefit. And you're going to be doing that throughout the course too. That's why we're meditating in the morning and the afternoon, so that you can get the benefit of that. And then if you'd like to meditate in the evening before you go to sleep, you can do that too. So over the next 5 days, if you can get 2 or 3 meditations in per day, this will really help build up your meditation practice, so that now when you're at home and you're not in a course like this and you're in your normal life, you can be normally meditating 2 or 3 times a day. And this will really help you and support you in your life as you develop your life practice. So do you guys have any questions on what it is that we're going to be learning as part of the course? No questions? For those of you guys online, you can ask questions through putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. For those of you guys here, whenever we get to questions throughout the entire week, except for when Siddharth's teaching, of course, is that if you could use these microphones here, because then the people online will be able to hear you and be able to benefit from your question. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button, the lights come on, you just wait a second or so, you hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And then we have plenty of microphones, so if you just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share the microphone with them. So that way the people online will be able to participate with us. And for those of you guys in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you put your questions in the comment section, I'll be able to see that. And those of you in Zoom, you can have the added feature of raising your hand, and then you open up your mic. All you need to do is electronically raise your hand and then unmute your mic, and we'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you on the live stream as well. So I don't see any questions here. Let me just check the YouTube and Facebook. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's move into the first talk that I have to share with you, which is the life story of Gotama Buddha. This is chapter 19 in the first book, and this chapter is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. This is where you're going to learn the life story of the Buddha a bit, and helping you to understand what his life was and how he transpired, what motivated him to this journey to enlightenment. So I'm going to be sharing that with you. And I've organized this talk around these key times during his life: his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, his teaching career, and then what actually motivated him to be able to get to enlightenment, which is the sickness, aging, and death. 3 really challenging times during an individual's life, for yourself, but also for other people too. Maybe when you see your mom or dad sick or aging or dying, this can be really challenging for you. So I'm going to help you understand that a bit. And as I go, as I mentioned, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. So the life story of the Buddha is formed in what we refer to as Nepal. This is where it starts. During that lifetime, it wasn't actually Nepal, but today we call it Nepal. He was born in this region of the world over 2,500 years ago. He was born in 563 BC, and this was over 2,500 years ago. He was born into a family that was a royal family. His mom was a queen, and his dad was a king. During this time frame, if you were a member of a certain family and you were a female and you were pregnant, when it was time to deliver your baby, you would go back to your homeland and actually deliver the baby in your home with your parents and your siblings and things like that. So the queen, being pregnant, when she was getting close to delivery, they organized a caravan and they took her back to her homeland, and they were traveling back to her homeland when she went into labor. And when she went into labor, they stopped the caravan, and she gets out and goes over to a tree, and she reaches up and holds onto the branch of a tree and starts trying to deliver the baby. The baby was having trouble coming out of the birthing canal, so it ends up breaking through the side of her stomach, and it's born out of the side of her stomach. And because of this, she ends up dying 7 days later. right? Nowadays, we would just do a C-section and she would have been just fine. But since the baby couldn't come out and it breaks through the side of the stomach, they didn't have the medical technology to fix that. So she ends up dying 7 days after his life, after his birth. Well, dying during childbirth for the mother or even the child was not uncommon during this time frame because medical technology wasn't really as developed as it is today. So there were protocols in place of things that you would do and ways to handle these situations if the mother would die. And the way that they would handle this is that your siblings would adopt the children as your own. So she had an older sister who adopted Siddhartha Gotama as her own child. So essentially his aunt was his stepmother, and she adopts him as her own child and raises him as her own child. There's a portion in the original teachings of the Buddha that describes what happens at his birth that I think is probably an embellishment of the story. It could potentially be true, but I suspect that it's actually not true. That sometimes during history, when somebody's done something as impactful as the Buddha, people kind of embellish the story along the way. Because in the original teachings, it says that when he was born, he immediately walked 7 steps. Lotus flowers were blossoming under his feet. And then he spoke and he said, "This will be my last birth." I don't suspect this actually occurred, because if this occurred, the next part of the story wouldn't actually be needed. Because the next part of the story is that his father summoned advisors, kind of like fortune tellers, to come and tell him what his son was going to become. Well, if you have a child that is born and they walk right away and there's lotus flowers blossoming under their feet and they can speak right away, you don't really need to have other people tell you what this child's going to become. They're going to become a pretty important, significant person in the world. This is a miracle, right? So I don't suspect this is actually true, but I wasn't there, so I don't know. But it is in the original source teaching, so that's why I share it with you. So the next part of the story is that his father summons 108 advisors, like fortune tellers, to let him know what is his son going to become. This was a common practice during that time frame because the father was eager to know what is going to happen with my son. And these fortune tellers come in, and 107 of them tell his father that your son's going to be a great monarch, a great ruler. He's going to rule over your land. He's going to expand your territory. And his father likes that. He's like, yeah, that's my boy. Yeah, he's going to expand my land. He's going to expand my territory, expand my kingdom. Well, there was this one advisor, the very last one, who comes in when he apologizes to the king, and he says, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I heard what those other advisors said, and they're 100% correct that your son is going to be a great leader, but not in the way that you think. He's going to be a spiritual leader. He's not going to be a ruler or a king or a monarch." And his father didn't like this, right? And just in case this one advisor was correct, his father took action to try to ensure that his son would become a king. He sequesters him in the palace. He doesn't let him go outside the palace. He keeps him inside the palace his entire life. And he kind of tries to woo him into the ways of being a monarch. He gives him, great food and great fabric, royal riches, beautiful women bathing him, entertainment, everything you can imagine that a king or someone really rich and wealthy could provide their child. He gave him everything you could imagine. So he stays in the palace for 29 years. And at this time, his name was Siddhartha Gotama. That was his name. And he is essentially being wooed into the way of being a monarch. But at the age of 29, he realizes he's about to become the king. Because during this time frame, you would become the king at the age of 30. And then your father would retire. And then your father would be there to help you learn how to be a king. So at the age of 29, he knows, hey, I'm going to be the king soon. And I've never even been outside the palace. How could I rule over this population of people when I've never even been outside the palace? I've never been to the kingdom. So without his father knowing and against his wishes, he goes outside the palace and he takes with him his royal attendant. His royal attendant is like his chief of staff, somebody who he's really close to, his confidant, his attendant, right? And he goes outside the palace and he has what's referred to as the 4 observations. He sees a sickly person, an aging person, he sees a dead corpse, and he sees a roaming ascetic, someone that we would refer to as an ordained practitioner. And he doesn't understand what these things are because he's never really encountered them before. So he needs to talk to his royal attendant when he sees the sickly person. He's like, what's going on over there? Why are those people so upset and angry and frustrated? And he's like, that person's sick and they can't work and they're not going to be able to acquire food and the resources that they need in order to sustain their life. So them and their family are really disgruntled. This was like mind blowing for him because he had only ever lived in this lap of luxury. He only ever had everything he ever needed. He didn't understand this because he'd never seen this before. Then he sees this aging person, this kind of older, decrepit person, finding it really hard to walk around, being very challenged with their body. And this person is also disgruntled. And he has to ask his royal attendant, like, what's going on over there? And he's like, oh, this person, they're frustrated and angry because they're not able to move around the world as easily. And they're not able to acquire the basic necessities to sustain life. And this really has an impact on Siddhartha Gotama. Then he sees a dead corpse, a body that's just laying there. And he didn't even understand that this was the case. He didn't understand that after this life that we are all going to die. He didn't know that at this age because he was so sheltered in the palace. And he sees the family around the dead corpse grieving in sorrow and misery. And he has to ask his royal attendant, what's going on? And he's like, oh, this is what happens to us at the end of this life. We're all going to die. And then the family is grieving and upset. Right? And this really has an impact on Siddhartha Gotama. What he realizes is that the kingdom is full of misery and despair and grief, right? When he's living this life in the palace, everything's wonderful because everything around him is being set up in such a way to make life look so wonderful. But when he goes out into the kingdom, he sees all this misery and all this despair. And then he has the fourth observation, which is a roaming ascetic, somebody who's given up worldly possessions and entered into a life of homelessness, trying to get to enlightenment. You don't need to do that in order to get to enlightenment. You can get to enlightenment from the household life, but an individual who is a roaming ascetic, that's what they're choosing to do, is give up worldly possessions and enter into this life of homelessness. So in this life of homelessness, this individual is trying to figure out this sickness, aging, and death. And Siddhartha Gotama realizes through asking his royal attendant, what this person is doing, that this person is trying to find the answers to all of this sickness, aging, and death, and understanding why it's occurring and why people are so upset during this time frame. And Siddhartha Gotama decides in that moment that that's what he would like to do, that he would like to go off into the world and figure out why people experience these things so that he can actually help them. He didn't feel like he could help them as the king. So he ends up deciding to leave the royal palace. And when he goes back to the palace, at this time he was married. He had a wife and he had a young infant child. And he decides to leave. And it's actually the middle of the night when he leaves because he didn't understand the mind as well as he did by the time he got to enlightenment, but he understood enough that he felt like if he woke them up and he said goodbye and hugged them and kissed them, that he would find it challenging to leave. So he decided to not even do that. He just decided to walk out and leave. And when he left, he took up training with two individual teachers. And these two teachers were teaching him things like hanging himself upside down from trees. They were teaching him to pierce his body with metal implements. They were teaching him to do all these disparaging things to cause harm to the physical body, because there was various people during that time frame that they were claiming that it was them that had figured out how to get to enlightenment, and these were the teachings that they needed in order to get to enlightenment. So he takes up training with these two teachers. When he first left the palace, he left with his royal horse and his royal attendant, and then when he left, he ends up cutting off his hair right before he starts learning with these teachers. Because during this time frame, the way that people knew you were part of the royal family is you would grow your hair very long. Nowadays, in order to help people know who the king and the queen are, we just take pictures of them and put them all over the kingdom, and then everybody knows who the king and the queen are, or they're on the news, right? But during that time frame, they didn't have that. So the way that people would know who the royal family is you would have this long, beautiful, flowing hair. Because those of us that worked in the fields and were doing labor, we wouldn't be able to have long, beautiful, flowing hair because we're too busy. We couldn't detangle it. We couldn't shampoo it. We couldn't care for it. It would be dirty and knotted up. But for these royal people, they could sit around. They could have servants taking care of their hair, detangling it, shampooing it, taking good care of it. So if you went out into the kingdom with this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they would know that you're a member of the royal family. So by him cutting off his hair after having grown it for 29 years, it's like, I'm never going back, because nobody would ever believe that he was the king having cut off his hair. And when he takes up training with these teachers, they're teaching him to disparage the human body. The thought was that if you could cause pain to the physical body and your mind could overcome that you would get to enlightenment. But this isn't actually true. Siddhartha Gotama realized after 2 years of studying with these teachers, and these teachers declaring that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment and that he was a master of their teachings, that he realized that his mind wasn't in any better condition than it was when it was in the palace and he was studying with these two teachers. So he knew that what he was learning wasn't actually working to get to enlightenment. So even though the teachers had declared him to be a master of their teachings, he knew that he wasn't enlightened. So he got frustrated with the whole thing because he wasn't enlightened yet. He wasn't a Buddha. So he got frustrated and irritated, and he goes off on his own into the forest. But when he goes off into the forest, the only thing that he knows is the same things that people were teaching him. So that he was hanging himself upside down from trees, laying on beds of nails. He was starving himself. He took it all the way to the point where he was only eating 1 grain of rice per day. Right? So when he was in the royal palace, he was living this life of luxury. But then when he went out of the royal palace, he went all the way to the other side where he was disparaging the body. He was eating 1 grain of rice per day. And his body was emaciated. He had skin and bones, essentially. The flesh and the tissue and the muscle had all deteriorated pretty much. And he was on death's doorstep. He was meditating, and there was a mother and a young child that come by, and they see that he's meditating and that he's just about ready to die because his bones are protruding, his ribs are protruding, and they begged and pleaded with him to eat some rice. And they offered him some rice. And he reluctantly accepts this rice, and he starts to eat it. And he realizes in this moment that when he was in the palace, he was living this life of luxury, of all these sensual pleasures. But when he left, he went all the way to the other side where he was disparaging the body. Well, he discovers what's called the middle way, which is coming to the middle, where you do things in moderation. So rather than indulging in sensual pleasures or disparaging the body and only eating 1 grain of rice, you can come to the middle, where you eat in moderation, for example. So this really accelerates his practice. So after having been with these two teachers for 2 years, he starts to now practice what's referred to as the middle way. And more, he discovers what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So over the next 4 years, he actually gets to enlightenment. And he knows that he's enlightened because his mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. He knows what it feels like to experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And his mind doesn't experience that anymore. So he knows he's figured it out. And he did this on his own without the help of any teachers or any guides. But he knew his teachings were the truth, but they were so different than what other people were teaching at the time. So he wasn't sure whether he was going to share his teachings with other people or not. So he goes to this tree and he hangs out at this tree for about 7 weeks, contemplating of whether or not he should share his teachings with others or not, because he knew his teachings were so vastly different. So he didn't attain enlightenment at this tree, although that is what people attribute to his enlightenment. He really attained enlightenment over multiple year journey. But he spent 7 weeks at this particular tree contemplating of whether or not he should share his teachings. And we know the answer to the story, or the ending of the story, is that yes, he did decide to share his teachings. And the way that this happened is after 7 weeks, he ends up going back to the area where he was originally studying with those first 2 teachers. And when he comes into that area, he encounters 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers. So these first 5 people that he encounters, they start laughing at him. They start joking him and mocking him because when they see him, he looks so healthy. He's got meat on his bones. His skin is bright and vibrant. He's very healthy because to them, in order to get to enlightenment, you needed to be starving yourself. So the fact that he had meat on his bones and he looked healthy, they were like, he's given up. Look at him. He's a loser. He failed. They thought he had gone back to the royal life. So they started mocking him and joking him. But by this time, you don't have any discontentedness. When somebody's mocking you and joking you now, you probably get angry. You probably get frustrated. You feel disrespected. You get irritated. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have those feelings. So the Buddha knew he had gotten to enlightenment, and here's these people mocking him and joking him and making fun of him. So he just comes over to where they're at. He sits down and he takes his hand and he touches the earth and he performs a miracle. This is the one and only miracle that he performs. And what he does is when he touches the earth, it calls animals to come to where he's at. There's birds and lizards and snakes and squirrels and rabbits and deer and different things like this that all come and converge to the location where he's at. So these first 5 people, they're like, okay, you got my attention. I'll sit down and talk. What do you have to say? Right? So they sit down and he delivers his very first teaching. It's called the Four Noble Truths. You're going to learn about this tomorrow, right? The Four Noble Truths, he explains the problem in the unenlightened mind. He explains the cause of this problem. He explains the elimination of it, and he explains the complete path forward. So in 4 simple statements, which can be independently verified on your own, you can have this breakthrough to understanding what's causing your anger and your sadness and your frustration and all these other discontent feelings. Because in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, you will tend to believe that other people are causing you to be angry, or you will blame other people for the feelings and emotions that you experience. But you can learn and independently verify in the Four Noble Truths that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. And this is why you can eliminate it, because it's your own mind that's causing it. If it was something external that's causing your mind to be angry and frustrated and all these discontent feelings, then that means you're going to want to fix something external. You're going to want to go around and change the world. You're going to want to change other people because you're going to think the problem is external. But when you understand that the problem is inside your own mind and you receive the tools and the techniques and the wisdom of how to train your mind, you can eradicate these discontent feelings. So you need to be able to do what we call establish right view, where you establish the understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. And that's what will happen tomorrow when we share the Four Noble Truths. So this first teaching, this first 5 students, they were able to independently verify that the Buddha had indeed discovered what the problem was, the cause of that problem, the elimination, and the path forward, because they were able to independently verify it. And depending on how Siddhartha teaches tomorrow, you should be able to independently verify it too. I'm not sure. I've never sat in a talk with Siddhartha to know how he teaches it, but if he teaches it the way that I do, you should be able to independently verify that yes, your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, right? And now with that understanding, you learn the tools and techniques of how to actually eradicate them and eliminate them. So from that point forward, the Buddha was enlightened at the age of 35. He now teaches for the next 45 years until his death at the age of 80. So he dedicates the rest of his life living this life of homelessness, where he walks around, he basically receives donations from people, he sleeps in people's houses, he shares teachings with them. He does end up spending time with his family. Sometimes people are mistaken. They think that the Buddha abandoned his family. He comes back to that part of the world, and his son ends up ordaining with him, his wife ends up ordaining with him, his stepmother ordains, a lot of his cousins and brother-in-laws. All these people get to enlightenment during his lifetime. Countless people get to enlightenment during his lifetime. So for 45 years, he shares, this is what it took for me to get to this enlightened mental state. And now you can learn that. You can reflect on it to independently verify it, and you can practice it, and you can experience the same thing as well. So the Buddha's community just grew and grew and grew. And by the time he got to enlightenment, his mind was fully purified, and he's considered to be a Buddha. There's 3 criteria that make a Buddha, the primary criteria. The first one is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's the first criteria. The second criteria is they're going to dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people are going to get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then the third criteria is that upon their death, they would have already preserved their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they preserve their teachings so that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. So you can get to enlightenment, but you're not going to be a Buddha by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll be an enlightened being, which will be plenty, right? But it's not like a badge of honor or certificate or something like that. You'll just know that your mind is enlightened because you don't experience any anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings anymore, and other things too that I'm going to share with you after this talk here. So this original motivation that the Buddha has in order to get to enlightenment of sickness, aging, and death, he ultimately discovers why people experience so much frustration and grief and misery around these times. What he discovers is that the mind is craving permanence. That when you get sick, if you're disgruntled and angry, you're craving permanent health, not realizing that this body is impermanent. It's not possible for this body to be permanently healthy. It's just not possible. But if your mind is longing, yearning, and craving for it to be permanently healthy, you'll be angry or sad or irritated or annoyed when you're unhealthy, when you're sick. Or maybe there's certain activities that you normally participate in, that you go outside and you do, and you're craving and longing, yearning, and holding on to those and wanting those things to be permanent. And now when you got to stay home because you're sick, now maybe you're disgruntled or irritated or annoyed because of that. So when the mind's craving permanent health and now the body is sick, you're going to feel discontent. You're going to feel irritated, annoyed because you're not getting what you want. Then the same thing with aging, that if you crave permanent youthfulness and you want to be youthful, when you see wrinkles, when you see gray hair, when you get a little bit of fat here or there, right, you're going to be disgruntled. When it's harder for you to walk around and you get all these aches and pains in the body, you'll be disgruntled and irritated. And the same thing with death. If you're craving permanent existence, when it's getting close to your death, it'll be painful for you. Or if you're holding on to the material possessions in the world and you're holding on to your relationships, wanting them to be permanent, when you get close to death, you'll struggle, you'll have difficulties. Or if other people are dying around you, like grandma, grandpa, mom and dad, brothers and sisters, if you're craving for them to be permanent, yet they are impermanent, you'll be happy when they're alive, but when they die, you'll be sad. You'll feel frustrated or agitated. You'll feel sorrow and grief and despair. It's not your love that's causing the grief and misery and despair. What's causing it is the craving for permanence, wanting this being to be permanent, when in reality, they're not permanent. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Every single one of us have to die. So you can intellectually understand that every one of us have to die. But if your mind's holding on to mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, when they do die, you'll grieve because you're not getting what you want. Just like if it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. But then if you're happy because of the sun, when it rains, you'll be sad. You'll be frustrated. Or if you're happy when your bank account is this balance, when your bank account goes down here, you'll be sad and frustrated because you're basing your inner feelings on some condition. That condition is not permanent. So if you base your inner feelings on wanting permanent health or wanting permanent youthfulness or wanting permanent life for yourself or others, when you are confronted with this impermanence, the unenlightened mind doesn't understand it. It doesn't understand this universal truth of impermanence that you're going to learn about tomorrow. So the Buddha was motivated by sickness, aging, and death, and he ultimately discovers that the reason why this is occurring is because of impermanence, and the grief and the misery and despair is being caused by craving, desire, attachment. Because of birth, there is going to be sickness, aging, and death. It's unavoidable because of impermanence. No matter how enlightened you are, you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death, right? So the problem of birth is solved by eliminating the pollutions in the mind so that a being isn't continuously reborn and brought back into the world over and over and over again. This deals with the cycle of rebirth, which is something that the Buddha taught during his lifetime. But when you're first getting started, I suggest that you set this aside, because the cycle of rebirth is something that you will need to learn as part of your journey to enlightenment, but it's not something that you need to learn right at the very beginning. So even though there's this underlying understanding of the cycle of rebirth, and this can be independently verified, that every single one of us are experiencing constant constant rebirth. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but it can be independently verified. Just understand that that's underlying this, that if there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death. So the way you solve the discontentedness during sickness, aging, and death is you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And then having eliminated craving, desire, attachment, your mind will be peaceful and joyful permanently. And then there won't be birth. There won't be a rebirth. So what happened in the past is in the past. What's happened in the future is in the future. So this whole cycle of rebirth, you can set it aside and approach the core central teachings of the Buddha, which is what this course is going to help you to do. And then as you learn these and you develop them and you see the truth in them and you're able to train your mind and you're able to experience more and more improvement to the condition of your mind, maybe a year and a half in, 2 years in, that's where you start really approaching the cycle of rebirth and starting to understand it, because you've seen so much significant progress at that point that you're now ready to start approaching that. One of the biggest ways to be able to confirm the cycle of rebirth is having observed your past lives. There's people who have observed their past lives. And the way that this happens is you clear out the pollution of your mind. And as you're clearing out the pollution of your mind, you might actually observe your past lives. And that's the ultimate confirmation. But there's other ways to confirm it as well. But you'll never get to the elimination of the pollution of your mind if you don't understand the core central teachings. So that's why I suggest people to focus on the core central teachings first, rather than addressing this whole cycle of rebirth. I suggest you just kind of set it to the side, but just understand that it's there and it's something that you can learn in the future. So the thing that I'll end on, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have, is that nobody ever said life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough, right? Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings, it's not easy. But learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough. Because when you're struggling and you're having difficulties in your life, this is just because you have a lack of wisdom. There's certain wisdom that you don't understand about these natural laws around you. And when you understand these natural laws, you'll be able to make wise decisions. You won't have those struggles and difficulties anymore. By the time you get to enlightenment, your life is at ease. There's nothing you're struggling with. Right? You're not having difficulties. You don't have problems by the time you get to enlightenment. You just have certain things that you do on a day-to-day basis. Your life is completely at ease. You don't have bitterness and hostility and harshness in your mind. All your relationships are at ease. So life can feel very tough in the unenlightened state. But nobody ever said life was supposed to be easy. Learning and practicing Gotama Buddha's teachings, it's not easy, but it will ensure that life is not tough. Because as you awaken your mind to enlightenment, life will be very peaceful and very joyful for you. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on the life story of the Buddha? And just reminding you guys online, for anyone who's joined us, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Any questions here? No? Okay. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take our first break for today. It's basically 10:20. If we can come back at 10:45, that'll give us about a 25 minute break. Give you guys a chance to stretch your legs, use the restroom, talk with each other. If you like to get drinks or snacks or things like that. If you go outside the main temple and you turn right, there's a whole lot of restaurants down there. There's even a 7-Eleven and different things down there. There's usually a little shop open here in the temple, but today's a holiday in Thailand. That's why there's not much traffic. There's not many people out because there's a holiday. It's the Queen's birthday, the King's wife. It's her birthday today. His mother, who is the queen also, her birthday is in August. So today is a holiday. So that's why you don't see too many people out if you guys traveled here from anywhere of any distance. So take your time, relax and rest. And then we'll start again at 10:45. And what I'm going to start with is helping you to understand what is enlightenment. This is where you're going to learn all the ins and outs of what enlightenment is and what it isn't. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you after the break. Okay? Take care.